The main focus in diabetes is this A1C and managing the blood glucose. But other factors like the lipids and the blood pressure, the insulin resistance, all this leads to increased heart risk. Research is showing that it's also affect our brain health and our risk of dementia as we get older. Everything really is connected, and the same lifestyle changes that you would make that reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes or reverses it or helps you better manage it. So, when you're managing your diabetes better, you're really protecting your whole body. The food industry nowadays, it's not designed for our health. They're unhealthy. They keep us coming back for more. These labels that you look at the front of the package and it looks like it's so healthy. But then when you turn it around and look at the ingredients and the nutrition fact, you're finding out that it's quite not so healthy. A lack of sleep increases insulin resistance. Sleep is just not prioritized enough.
Welcome to Five Rivers Podcast from Heald. Here's a stat that should stop you in your tracks. More than 68% of people aged 65 or older with diabetes will die from heart disease. Think about that for a minute. That means for most people living with type 2 diabetes, the real threat may not be their blood sugar, it's their heart. And the scariest part, most don't even know about it. This is why I'm so glad to have Valerie Bachinsky with us today. She's a registered nurse, coach, and founder of NurseGuided Wellness. She's helped hundreds of people better understand the silent, often deadly connection between metabolic dysfunction and cardiovascular risk. In today's episode, we will unpack the science, the misconceptions, and most importantly, the real life changes that can help you, your heart, and your blood sugar. Welcome to the discussion, Valerie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So as I mentioned at the beginning, more than 68% of adults with diabetes will die from heart disease. So if you're living with type 2 diabetes, you're already living with serious cardiovascular risk, whether you know it or not. Valerie, let's start with the foundation then. How are type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease connected biologically?
Okay, so, they are deeply connected, and most of it stems from the insulin resistance. So when the body becomes resistant to insulin, the blood sugar rises and the pancreas starts pumping out more insulin. And this creates a metabolic resistance and a metabolic imbalance. And this, one of the big things that this leads to is chronic systemic inflammation. And this chronic systemic inflammation, it damages the body in many, many ways, beyond heart disease. But, when it comes to the heart, what it does is it's damaging the blood vessels of the heart from the inside out. And it also accelerates that buildup of plaque that's known as atherosclerosis. It also causes damage to the blood vessels called endothelial dysfunction, which impairs primarily it impairs the blood vessels' ability to dilate and regulate blood pressure, but it also impairs it from preventing clotting. So it makes it more likely that those clots are going to build up on the walls of the arteries. It also affects the lipid or the cholesterol balance and can lead to high triglycerides, which is a major risk factor for heart disease. Low HDL, which is the good cholesterol, and it also promotes the formation of these more dense LDL cholesterol. Now, LDL is the bad cholesterol, but this makes the bad cholesterol even worse. So this, again, increases the risk of cardiovascular disease.
Got it. So why do you feel that so many people that don't realize that their heart is at risk too when thinking about diabetes?
So I think quite simply, they're not told.
Mm,
This information isn't transferred from doctors to patients, our healthcare system, and I know this is probably going out all over the world, but in the United States anyway, our healthcare system really is not set up to give doctors the time
mm,
to educate patients.
mm,
And then there's also just this lack of awareness about type 2 diabetes. People think it's all about managing the sugar, getting the sugar down, getting that A1C down.
mhm.
But, it can double to quadruple the risk of heart attack and stroke. Um, and it builds up, and these symptoms aren't usually seen until significant damage has already been done, especially in people with diabetes, because often with diabetes, there's this nerve damage happens, and people can have, usually when someone has the heart muscle isn't getting enough oxygen, they can feel that, they can have chest pain.
Mhm, mhm,
But someone who has diabetes might not have that chest pain.
mm.
I actually have a friend who had a heart attack, and he had type 2 diabetes, and he didn't even know until his annual physical, and it shows up on the EKG. So they don't have that classic chest pain experience when their heart muscle isn't getting enough blood. And again, like I said, often the main focus in diabetes is this A1C and
Mm,
managing the blood pressure. Excuse me, managing the blood glucose. But other factors like the lipids and the blood pressure, the insulin resistance, all this leads to increased heart risk. So even though the blood sugars might be getting managed and the A1C might be, where they want it, there's still this increased risk, and it's because of that other metabolic dysfunction.
So you obviously you have worked with hundreds of clients. You've got many people that you work with. You refer to one of your friends as well. I'm just curious, how do people react when either you or when they have a scary situation and they find out like, oh gosh, it was the correlation between diabetes and cardiovascular. What is that sort of aha moment? What does that look like? Yeah, just curious.
Well, it depends on the person. Um, I worked in cardiac surgery for
Hmm.
years, cardiac catheterization for a year. And a lot of people, they had no idea. And I
Mm,
also think our understanding of it was a little bit less back then. A lot of people didn't even realize that they had
mm,
diabetes until they had this they come in because they have a heart attack or they have a blockage, and they come in emergently, and basically their lives are saved by,
mm.
a heart surgery or a cardiac catheterization. And then, oh, well, do you know you have diabetes? And
Yeah.
they did not know that. It doesn't, I work with a lot of people with the lipoprotein A. So this is one of my main things. So this is another type of cholesterol. Um, and it's odd, it's funny, because what I see with the lipoprotein A is I see people discover that they have this, but for some reason it creates more of an urgency than when
Mm,
someone finds out that they have type 2 diabetes. People find out they have an inherited risk, and they want to do everything to fix that.
yeah.
But you don't see the same thing with type 2 diabetes, which is bewildering to me, because it does kind of increase the risk the same amount.
Yeah.
And then having both um, amplifies that risk even more.
Yeah, agreed,
Um,
agreed. Well, I think so. At the end of the day, at least the good news is that if you're managing diabetes, hopefully effectively, you're already managing your heart at the same time, whether you
yes,
realize it or not. So that's sort of a good takeaway or good, I guess, silver lining, if you will, that hey, if you're managing one effectively, you're gonna be able to manage the other one much better as well.
yeah,
Which brings us to the point about lifestyle, right? Lifestyle fixes. And here's a stat that I found very very interesting, and there's a reason why I'm standing right now as I'm talking with you as well, is that sitting for more than 6 hours a day, 8 to 9 hours with no breaks, which is very common for a lot of folks, especially the ones that have office jobs and things like that, the so-called white collar jobs, if you will,
Mhm.
that no movement break within that time frame is associated with up to 34% higher risk of heart disease and 16 to 19% higher risk of death overall, even if you exercise later. And when I saw this stat, honestly, it was a very powerful reminder of the small daily habits that most people don't think about, that we just not necessarily ignore on purpose, but it's not built into us. It's not the something that we're reacting to or thinking about on a regular basis. So from your perspective as a nurse and a coach to a lot of these individuals or those folks that work with you, what are some of the lesser known lifestyle factors, habits, if you will, that raise both diabetes as well as the heart disease risk that you commonly see?
Okay, so a big one, so you're right, sitting is for prolonged
Yeah.
periods is a big one. One of the sayings that's out there now is sitting is the new smoking.
Mm,
And it really, that prolonged sitting all day without getting up regularly and
mm,
moving around can, increases the risk of heart disease, of diabetes, and also many other, chronic diseases. But another big one I think that comes, probably a lot from work is this chronic stress.
mm,
So, this raises cortisol, which raises blood sugar, it raises blood pressure. It drives the accumulation of this visceral fat,
mm,
which is this fat that is around the organs that greatly increases heart disease risk and risk for diabetes and metabolic dysfunction. So, just like you want to get up and move and not sit constantly.
mhm.
You also want to take like little breaks to interrupt that stress. So, maybe couple that standing with a few deep
Yeah.
breaths so that you're bringing down that cortisol level and interrupting that chronic stress cycle. Um, Another thing is poor sleep, and this is another huge thing that gets put on the back burner. Um, People give up sleep. They give it up to get more work done.
Yeah.
They get it up to binge watch their favorite TV show. Sleep is just not prioritized enough. And, there's this cultural thing about sleep where if you sleep too much, you're lazy and, you got to get up early in the morning and get, the 4 a.m. wake up
Yeah.
routine. But sleep is so important.
Yeah.
A lack of sleep it increases insulin
Hmm.
resistance. It leads to appetite dysregulation. So we eat more because we're tired, and then we also crave these sugary, fatty foods that, somewhere in our biology we think that this can replace sleep when in
Mm,
actuality it really doesn't.
mm.
Poor sleep also raises the blood pressure and the inflammatory markers that are also these, increases risk for heart disease and diabetes. And, there's studies that show, that the lack of sleep definitely leads to a higher risk of both type 2 diabetes and heart disease.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that we have. I mean, obviously, science backs all the claims that you were just making. There's enough data behind it as well to prove that. And what we see on a regular basis, obviously, because we're in a unique position to be able to track data on sleep quality, for example, right? The deep to REM ratio, the how many times did somebody wake up, or
Mhm.
the movement based on the fitness trackers, and any sort of devices that we can use to get that data from. We constantly see this, that the poor sleep quality is in a lot of ways related to stress, i.e., and also heart rate variability. And we see the blood glucose spikes that are very abrupt because of that. And again, that the people are then going over to comfort foods, right? Oh, I'm just going to go have some ice cream because I can't sleep right now.
Yep.
And I'm going to go watch that episode of, my favorite show on Netflix. And the next thing you know, it's 2 hours later and you've
Mhm.
completely
Yeah.
disrupted the
Or
sleep
scrolling on the
cycle.
phone.
Yeah, yeah, and again, the studies that say that, hey, just a one night disturbance in sleep pattern can cause the damage for the next few days, as long as, or when you're trying to recover back from that sleep deficit, if you will, or quality sleep. So it's very interesting how the biology and the mind working together, and something as ignored as sleep, like you talked about, right? As a culture, we take pride in, hey, man, I stayed up
Yep.
till late. I woke up early. Well, did you really accomplish something outside of just harming your body at that point, right? So
Mm,
there's this
true.
there's this paradox that people have to understand, that there's a fine balance to be had. Now, forget the pun, but the elephant in the room. Let's talk about weight, right? Because I think most people, I think you made a comment earlier as well. Most people are looking at it from a weight equation on, hey, if I'm overweight, or if I have, if I have excess pounds, then there's something wrong. If not, then I'm okay. But we have seen people that quote unquote, look healthy on the outside,
Yep.
but they're still at risk, right? Why does that happen? What are the main reasons for them being at risk, even though they looked healthy?
So, a big one is having too much visceral fat.
Hmm.
So basically, this is the fat that's stored around the organs. It's metabolically active. It pumps out these inflammatory chemicals, and this increases insulin
Hmm.
resistance. It increases the risk of that endothelial dysfunction and the atherosclerosis. So you have your skinny fat,
Hmm.
which is a term I'm not sure if they're still using it. Um,
It makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah. So, they're starting to say that a better way to look at risk as far as, let's say, body composition
Hmm.
is to look at waist circumference.
Okay.
And, we want that to be less than 37 for men and 31 and a half for women. And another way to also look at it is the uh, high hip to waist, waist to hip ratio. So if it's greater than 90 for men, I'm sorry, zero point 0.9 for men or 0.85 for women, that greatly increases your risk.
Got it. So there is, again, to your earlier point, the skinny fat, and again, I don't know if it's politically correct or not anymore to use that, but let's, for argument's sake, that that is the right, or the terminology to be used. That there is, it doesn't guarantee that you're healthy. It's just, it's hidden, right? Or it's somewhere where it's just not on the surface, but you have to be able to, you should keep an eye on it. You should be actively monitoring some of these other markers, if you will, from a
Yeah.
composition perspective, that say that. So if someone listening to our discussion wants to make just one small change, or big change for that matter, what do you recommend that they just should think about?
Okay, so just one small change for diabetes. I think is just moving more. And
Hmm.
I think the best time for someone who has type 2 diabetes to move is to just sneak in a 10-minute walk after, pick one meal.
Hmm.
So if you're just going to do one, and I really advocate for this, starting very small.
Hmm.
So starting with a habit that you can do,
Hmm.
and, saying I'm going to walk 10 minutes after every meal is a lot, but picking just one meal, putting on your shoes, walk, set a timer, walk for
Yeah.
5 minutes and turn around and come back. It's got so many benefits. It's been shown to reduce that post-meal insulin
Hmm.
and blood glucose spike that
Hmm.
happens immediately after you eat. It's good for it helps with sleep, getting movement in. It helps lower stress. And something really easy and simple like this is something I like to call a gateway habit.
Hmm.
So it
I like that
once
term.
it's so easy, you pick it easy, you feel successful, and then you
Yeah.
start. It can grow from there, and then maybe you are going to be doing after lunch and dinner, or you're going to start looking at other simple little easy habits that
Yeah.
you can change, because now you have this success that yes, you can make these changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the old adage, right? The small changes done consistently are going to be far more effective, far more powerful than big changes that you do once in a while.
Yeah. And I there's a lot of, if you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook and you're going through these ads,
Yeah.
um there's, and I saw one this morning. You have to do this. This is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
No, what you should be doing is what you can do and what you can do
Fair enough.
consistently.
Fair enough.
I think there's a lot of like people want to have this shock value now, and we have these influencers that are like the ideal, but that they're few and far in between. And I
Yeah.
bet most of them who say they're doing all this stuff every day probably really aren't.
Yeah.
What it does is it sets people up for failure, because
Hmm.
it's this ideal that not everyone can achieve. And so they set off on this huge plan,
Mm.
and when it falls through, doing everything at once,
Hmm.
they people just give up.
Well,
Where
yeah, the motivation, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not motivated to make a change, whether it's inherent or from external sources, or
Yep,
somebody emotionally blackmailing you, for lack of a better term, to be motivated to do that, it boils down to motivation, where people are going to stick to doing what they're planning on doing.
yeah,
And I want to switch gears a little bit, because motivation also goes towards the meal side of it as well, right? And again, we've talked about some of the stats earlier from the risk perspective, but from the research that I conducted and I was looking at it, I found a very interesting stat which said that eating a plant-based diet can reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes by 23%,
mhm,
and it also has some very strong protective factors towards heart health, right?
yep.
So what I would like to understand from you is, what role does food play into this whole equation, and in managing diabetes, also protecting your heart, obviously, and what is one of the most common nutrition myths that you have heard that you'd like to bust and share with people?
We don't, it's the old cliche, food is medicine.
Mm,
Um, or let thy food be thy medicine. I
hmm.
think that comes from, I can't, some Greek philosopher. But vegetables and fruits like herbs, spices, they all have compounds which are called
Mm,
antioxidants. And this helps reduce oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is something that just happens in our body naturally. um, you know, you can't avoid it. It's just a natural byproduct of metabolism.
mm,
But this oxidative stress, it causes inflammation. It's a major driver of both insulin resistance and artery damage. And we get these antioxidants from vegetables and fruits, and also herbs and spices. But um, eating the food that you eat is going to, because you're eating more vegetables than you are the
mm,
herbs and spices, right? And I just talked about the one habit to start with is moving.
mm, mm,
But I think a close second is just eating more vegetables.
mm,
Not eating enough vegetables, not getting enough antioxidants is associated with higher inflammation and the endothelial dysfunction. And what you see a lot of nowadays are these overly restrictive
yeah.
diets, the keto, and worse is the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
I really think we're going to see a big negative effect of this in a few years. We're going to see rates go up of type 2 diabetes, of heart disease, because studies have shown that even eating just 2 ounces of red meat or processed meat every day, it raises the risk of type 2 diabetes. It raises the risk of cardiovascular disease. It's linked to increased inflammation, increased oxidative stress, and higher insulin resistance. And then at the same time, they're also eliminating all these healthy foods, not just the vegetables, but the whole grains
Mm.
that provide these antioxidants and the nutrients and these other things called phytonutrients, which are chemicals that plants make that are highly health protective. And you're also eliminating fiber,
Mm.
which increases this. There's a lot of talk now about gut health.
Yeah.
And really, it's all connected. So if you're not putting into your gut the right things, you're increasing inflammation, and that translates to inflammation throughout the body.
Yeah. Okay. So let's play a fun game just for a
Yes.
second. If you were to talk to somebody, if you were at the airport, right, and you're traveling and you're at the airport, what would be your better than nothing meal option at the airport, for example? And as a follow up, you're on the road, you're running around, and you got to grab snacks, either at home or stop at the store or something like that. So what would that look like for Valerie? What would you recommend?
Okay, well, first of all, I try to plan ahead. I haven't flown in a while, but even when I did, I would try to sneak in my own, bring my own snacks, because it
Yeah.
is hard to
Hmm.
eat healthy on the run. But it is getting easier. I think we're seeing more of like
Hmm.
these salad places pop up. But you still have to be careful there, because a lot of salad dressings, you're getting a healthy salad and it's high in sugar. A lot of
Yep.
so you know get a salad or get a bowl, like a chipotle bowl, or we have Rubio's here, which is it's like a coastal Mexican restaurant, it's
Okay.
called. But and getting the brown rice instead
Yeah.
of the white rice. So just making these little switches like this, going easy on the dressing. Another great thing is just nuts, but
Mm.
not too many, because they are very calorie dense.
Yeah.
But just picking up just a package of walnuts, which are high in omega-3, which is another thing that can reduce that risk of heart disease, is eating more omega-3. And fruit, if you can find a fruit, and more importantly, if you can find a fruit and then pair it with a protein or a fat, so an apple with nuts. Or I've seen like these hummus snacks, like
Yeah.
carrot sticks
Yeah.
and hummus. You're finding like that at the airport now,
Yeah.
or at at a convenience store. So it is getting easier.
Yeah, and I've noticed that too. I travel a lot actually, so not just domestically, but I do travel a lot internationally as well. And yeah, it does seem to get easier and easier on a regular basis. People are getting more exposed to the healthier choices. They're following suit as well. So based on what you just said, a couple of thoughts, and correct me if I'm wrong, but first is that you talked about the small habit of maybe the walking post meal walking, and then obviously you discussed a little bit about food as well here, giving some great pointers. Is that food is a one of the tools in the kit, if you will, in the
Yes.
grand scheme of things. And combining that with small habits is the one that makes a difference. But at the end of the day, what you eat today is either feeding your disease that you're exposed to right now, or it's going to fuel recovery for you to get
Yep.
better over time.
Or you're
That's kind of
fighting it.
what I get for it.
Yes.
Perfect. Right.
Food, it's very important. It's really every choice we
Yeah.
make. And you can't expect to be perfect.
Mm, mm.
And there are going
Well
to
said.
be, I hate to call them cheat meals, but
Yeah.
and I feel like if you're going to have that sort of meal, enjoy that,
Yeah.
own it. But the majority of your choices should be keeping in mind that you want to stay healthy. That I mean, really, it's self-love. It's caring for yourself. I think people get stuck into this mindset that it's you have to be disciplined and you have to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, it's about cherishing your body and doing the
Yeah.
right things for your body and not only living longer, but feeling better for longer and being able to do the things you love, traveling. And, for me, it was osteoarthritis.
Mm.
About 7 or 8 years ago, it got pretty bad for me. And it's all the same. It's driven by inflammation. The
Mm.
same food choices affect it. And I had to make that decision. Was I going to keep, and it's not even a love for food. I think it's a habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
We become conditioned to turn to food for pleasure, to turn to food as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Um, and it is hard. It can be difficult to break. And you do have some people do best making a drastic change. Other people do better with small, gradually increasing. But it does come down to, in that moment, choosing my joint health or my heart health, or choosing that whatever pint of Haagen-Dazs,
Yeah.
that temporary pleasure,
Yeah.
which is slowly going to chip away at long-term
Yeah.
happiness.
Well, and that you actually was a perfect segue to what I wanted to ask you from a long term perspective as well, which is, and again, stats. We've talked about stats over and over again, but more than 80% of people abandon their health goal within first 6 weeks. So, hey, I'm going to go lose weight. I'm going to go drop 10 pounds over the next whatever 2 months, for example, and 80% of the people that will make that call will abandon within the first 6 weeks.
Mhm.
Less than one will stick to those changes long term. So again, the rates start dropping drastically of consistency of sticking to it for a long term win, which again to me usually doesn't mean that people are lazy. I mean, they just
No.
they can be thought of it that way, but most people are not failing because they're lazy. They're failing because changing behavior, you talked about that, right, is hard if you don't have the right support, if you don't have the right strategy, if you don't have the right mindset. And we see that often, obviously, with a lot of our members and folks that we are supporting and helping. But why in your mind do you feel that so many people feel like failures psychologically when it comes to changing their health? And what are some of the biggest mindset shifts that you work on, you recommend to people to say, hey, let's look at it differently? What does
Mhm.
that shift look like?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that all or nothing thinking,
Mm,
that black and white. And I think this comes from diet, that diet culture, that diet
mm,
mentality. And I think this is another thing that like keto diet kind of drives, is
yeah.
that you're either on the diet or you're off the diet.
Yeah.
So you are doing everything right, or you step off just a little bit, and then you feel like a failure.
Mm,
But it's not like that. It's about it does come down to every individual choice.
mm,
And even if you end up making a choice that isn't one that you started out that morning wanting to make, that doesn't
yeah.
mean that you failed. It means that you made one bad choice and then you just continue on. It doesn't mean that I fell off my diet or I'm off the wagon. It's it's about moving the needle in the direction of making more healthy, intentional choices
Mm,
and less of the unintentional choices, or making those choices intentional. Planning that in so that it doesn't seem like a failure.
yeah.
And then, like I said earlier, these unrealistic expectations that you see on social
Yeah.
media, that you see advertised out there, these highlight reels of people filling their fridge with just healthy food,
Yeah.
and the 2-hour gym workouts, and then people feel like if they can't stick to that,
Yeah.
that they failed. And then also this over reliance, and you mentioned motivation before. Motivation is very unreliable,
Mm,
and it's natural that it wanes, and it peaks, and it goes up and down, and our mood can influence that,
hmm
how much sleep we get, how much stress we're under. So it's better to focus on habits that you can stick to, and building, um motivation is part of it, but also when you're deciding on a new behavior, making sure that it's something that you can stick to.
Yeah. It's
And
interesting. You said that you're talking about the all or nothing, right? The the way the culture is going right now, our society is going right now. I find that binary response that we as humans, we as a society are incorporating in everything. It could be as simple as a celebrity that's the most favorite one day, and then they're falling off graces, they're the worst people ever, and we're never going to talk to them, or we're never going to support them and all. We are very we are a very pendulum sort of a society now these days. It's that
mhm,
either we've swung this way all of a sudden, that hey, don't touch anything when it comes to food, like don't touch carbs at all, they're bad for you and they're going to kill you and they're the worst thing in the world, or the pendulum swings all the way over here. It's like, hey man, just eat only protein and go heavy on
yep,
keto, and not realizing that, again, to your earlier point, not everything is meant for everybody, right? So when we
yeah,
we have talked to a lot of our members that we're supporting, and what we realize, or what they have seen in science over and over again as well, is that if, especially when it comes to diabetes, if your kidneys are weak, for lack of a better term, or if they are deteriorating over time, and you put a massive dose of keto based diet or protein based diet like keto, and heavily rely on keto
hmm,
fat and protein, you're going to accelerate the deterioration rather than
yes,
actually helping it, right? But then again, the misinformation from a food perspective, or this binary nature of, no man, I'm only going to do keto, can cause more harm than good, and people have to realize that. It's frustrating at times, I'm sure, as it
yep,
is for you as well, when you talk to people and you want to bang your head against the wall and say, man, come on, you're not getting it, that's not the way it's supposed to be done. But that's unfortunately the way things are, and we're just hoping to change, one mind at a time, if you will,
yeah.
for
And it's really
possible.
easy. I mean, I'll admit, years ago I fell into that keto trap,
Yeah.
and it's almost addicting, because you do see that big weight loss
Yeah.
at first, and it's called the whoosh, and it's mostly
Mm,
water, because when you're taking the sugar out of your cells, you're also losing water, and then
mm,
you just want to keep that going, and it does end up stalling. And then it's also this, you can go so crazy with keto, with the sticks and checking your urine for ketones, and I'm in
mm,
ketosis or I'm not. And then you eat one too many carbs, and now you're a failure because you're
yeah.
no longer in ketosis. I think it's psychologically damaging
Yeah.
as well.
Agreed. Agreed. So what's your message to someone who is feeling overwhelmed, that, again, there's a lot of mixed messages on what they should be doing versus what they are doing, what they're trying to make incremental, marginal, small changes? What's your message to someone like that?
Um, so what I like to do is I like to shift somebody from feeling like they're failing, or
Mm,
feeling like they can't change, to shifting that to being curious about their setbacks and why they can't change, and figure out what's getting in the way,
mm,
building that self-awareness. It could be a lot of different things. There's the addictive nature of sugar, right? And of our food. I mean, the food industry nowadays, it's not designed for our health.
Yeah.
And they know this. It's to keep us coming back. These foods have addictive qualities. They're unhealthy. They want us. They keep us coming back for more. Even these labels that you look at the front of the package and it looks like it's so
Yeah.
healthy, but then when you turn it around and look at the ingredients and the nutrition facts, you're finding out that it's not quite not so healthy.
Yeah, those 9,000 different ingredients. You're just like, man, I can't even pronounce all these, and now I'm going to consume those. And
Yep, and
it is,
all these
yeah,
hidden added sugars,
yeah.
that I mean, I looked at one the other day and it really looked like, "Oh, this is a cereal I can eat," and when I turned it around, I'm like and you'll hear me in the store, and I'll say, "Sugar," on the shelf. People probably think I'm crazy, but it is in everything, and
Yes.
the reason why it is in everything is because, um, it triggers these reward pathways in our
Mm,
brain that make us want more sugar.
mm,
So that's, one reason. But, people also have emotional reasons that they eat
mhm.
certain
Right.
foods, or they've developed these coping mechanisms. And then, just a habit, right?
Yeah.
Just like we bite our nails, we turn to food.
Yeah.
Um, you know, things that have been with us since childhood. So, instead of when you make a choice that you don't want to make, instead of beating yourself up, examining the reasons why and
Mm,
becoming a detective of your own mind and your own body, instead of, oh, I can never make this work.
yeah.
Because that's what you see so often. A lot of people come to me and they have failed in the past, and they don't, sometimes it's even hard to convince people that they to give it another shot because so many times, um, they haven't been able to stick it through in the
Mm,
past.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting, the psychological side of it, and it keeps coming back to what you can stick with, right? So the real victory isn't necessarily in the perfection. It's in progress that
Mhm.
lasts. Actually, my daughter has this saying. She's only 9, but I guess she heard it on a soccer field, um, you know, um, over or at soccer practice, and her coach, what he explained to the whole team was, uh, is in the past it used to be practice makes perfect. Right now they're changing the mindset to practice makes progress. Right, and I think that
I love
is such a great lesson to learn. Not just for, I mean, obviously, I'm glad that my daughter at a young age, at 9, 10 years old, is learning this, that practice will make progress. It's not about perfection. I think that will go a long ways for folks that are trying to get healthy as well.
mhm, I agree with that. I was thinking the other day, because I guess I consider myself an athlete, and one of the old sayings, right, is Yoda, um,
Hmm.
"Don't try, do," or
Yeah.
"Do, don't try," or ever how he says. And, that was one of these things that we kinda idolize that saying, but that's not really the right mindset,
Yeah.
right? Because we wanna, you might not be able to do it right now, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try
Yeah.
and practice and make that, progress and not strive for that perfection that very few of us can achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and try to follow it as much as possible. I know it's hard, but it is always aspirational. It's always something that we can all aspire to do, aspire to be, as we move forward, as we get older. Valerie, I want to thank you so much for such an insightful and grounding conversation. This was awesome. And what
Agreed.
we learned from you today is that managing blood glucose, managing blood sugar managing blood sugar isn't just about glucose, but it's about protecting the whole system, especially your heart. And it can
Yes.
start with small changes, make the tiny ones, see how they work, stick to it as you can, make modifications as you need, but be kind to yourself, work towards it on a regular basis, and great things
Yeah.
are possible.
And if I can just add, it
Yeah.
is about more than the heart. It is, you mentioned the kidneys,
Yeah.
it's the brain, the circulation in the legs. Everything is connected.
Mm,
And like see very often people try to separate everything into systems. And this is another thing you see in my space, the wellness space, is they tell you to niche down.
mm,
So you're focusing on just one thing. But what I learned is, like, the same lifestyle, because a lot of this is driven by inflammation,
mm,
the diabetes, the heart disease, the osteoarthritis. Now they're saying research is showing that it also affects our brain health and our risk of dementia as we get older. And everything really is connected, and the same lifestyle changes that you would make that reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes, or reverses it, or helps you better manage it, also reduces the risk of heart disease, of joint damage, of cognitive decline. So when you're managing your diabetes better, you're really protecting your whole body.
mm, mm. Thanks for those last comments. So, having said that, where can our listeners find more about you and Nurse Guided Wellness?
Okay. So, Nurse Guided Wellness is my YouTube channel. I
I
have
love that name, by the way. I love that
I love it too. I wish I thought of it first, because my business name is Genuine Glow Wellness,
name.
and I just haven't gone through the legal stuff to
Yeah.
change it yet. But I do want to switch it to Nurse Guided Wellness. But they can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Nurse Guided Wellness. I do also have a website, and that is genuineglowwellness.com. And on there, I do have a couple programs. I am working on, like I mentioned, these emotional barriers
Hmm.
to making more intentional choices. So I'm working on a program for that right now. I'm very excited about that. So on my genuineglowwellness.com website, you can get a hold of me. I have one-on-one coaching available. I also have several different programs and courses and stuff that you can find there. But I have it's growing a lot right now, my YouTube channel, Nurse Guided Wellness. And I'll have a couple videos on diabetes coming up. I talk a lot about heart health, and I talk a lot about just motivation. Like last week, I had a video about the healthy food labels and how to
Hmm.
better read food labels. So a lot of just basic health and wellness advice that is grounded in science.
Well, and we'll be sure to share some of that with our listeners as well. So please do check out, Valerie's great work, her channels, her website as well. And for those of you who are looking to take back control of your health, obviously Heald is here to support every step of the way. We'd encourage you to visit iheald.com. So it's the letter I, HEALD.com, to learn how sustainable lifestyle changes, small, big, and everything in between, and which are supported by expert coaching and the right tech, can help you reverse type 2 diabetes, improve your heart health at the same time, and give you the life that you deserve moving forward. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode.